You ever hear a story so crazy, so completely messed up, but also kind of human? You don't know whether to judge it or just lean in closer? Okay, listen to this. She called him Dad when she was a kid. He married her mom, but years later, she married him. Yeah, her stepdad. I know how that sounds. Weird, taboo, maybe even disgusting, right? But before you jump to conclusions, just give this story a chance. Because it's not what you think. This isn't some clickbait shock fest. It's real. It's complicated. It's way deeper than just a headline. And once you hear the full journey, the heartbreak, the silence, the backlash, you'll start to realize maybe love doesn't always come in a package we're ready for. If you're still here, great. Let's join Ava as she walks us through everything, exactly how it happened and why, against every rule in the book. It made sense.
There's a part of my story I've never been able to say out loud, not fully. Not to my friends. Not to my therapist. And definitely not to the people who only see what they want to see. But if you're here, maybe you're different. Maybe you're not here to point fingers. So I'm going to say it. Slowly. Honestly. The way I lived it. I fell in love with my stepdad. And eventually, I married him. His name is Ethan Cross. And no, he didn't raise me. He didn't walk me to school or help with my homework. He wasn't some father figure I got confused about. He came into my life when I was already broken. 14. Angry. Alone. He married my mom when I was 15. And back then, I didn't think he even liked me. He was just this tall, quiet guy with stormy eyes and expensive shoes who spoke more to his bourbon glass than to either of us. My mom, Olivia, she liked him because he didn't ask for much. She didn't love easily. She barely smiled. So when she found a man who didn't demand her affection, she held on tight. And me? I stayed in my room, drew in my sketchbooks, pretended not to notice that the air in our house was always too quiet. Ethan was a presence, not a parent. And that's important to say, because people think this story is about some man who took advantage of a child. But I was never his daughter. I was his wife's kid. And for years, that was all. Until she died. The accident was sudden. 1 minute, she was sending me passive-aggressive texts about visiting for winter break. The next, I was standing in a black dress beside a man I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. We barely looked at each other at the funeral. But grief is a strange thing. It doesn't just take people from you. It rearranges what's left. I was 19 when she died. He was 37. We were both hollow. And for some reason, in that emptiness, we started talking again. First through polite check-ins. Then longer calls. Then coffee meetups. Not as stepdad and stepdaughter. Just as Ethan and Ava. And somewhere between the awkward silences and the shared pain, something shifted. I started noticing things. The way he looked at me when I laughed. How he always stood between me and the world, like a shield. I told myself it was just gratitude. admiration, confused attachment. But late at night, when the world quieted down, I'd find myself sketching him. The line of his jaw, the way his shirt clung to his shoulders. And I hated myself for it. Because who falls in love with the man their mother once kissed? Who lets their heart wander into territory so off-limits it practically screams danger? I talked to Dr. Voss about it, my therapist. She listened. She didn't flinch. Just asked me questions like, when did you stop seeing him as a parental figure? I told her the truth. I never did. There was never a bedtime story. No, how was school, kiddo? No father-daughter bond to betray. And maybe that makes it worse. Or maybe that makes it clearer. But either way, it happened. And before you ask, yes. I knew Noah. Noah Hale, the guy with the easy smile, the good intentions, the crush that should have made sense. He was normal. Funny. My age. He asked me out more than once. We kissed once too. But it felt like trying on a sweater that looked better on the hanger. Because my heart was already somewhere else. With Ethan. The man who had once been Mom's husband. The man who had now become something entirely different. Look, I'm not proud of every choice I made. And I don't need a parade or a moral approval rating. But I'm telling this story because I need to stop pretending it didn't happen. Because it did. We happened. And if you want to understand how, then we need to go back. Back to the beginning. Before the grief. Before the love. Before the line between right and wrong got so blurry, I forgot there was even a line at all. Before Ethan, there was just me and my mother. And honestly, that wasn't the warm, cozy mother-daughter story people like to imagine. My mom, Olivia Reynolds, was ice and silk. Elegant, sharp, and emotionally sealed. She wore designer heels like armor. She never raised her voice, but when she got disappointed, which was often, her silence could choke a room. I remember being 8 and drawing a birthday card for her. I spelled beautiful wrong, added an extra L. She smiled, took the card, and without missing a beat said, "Maybe next year you'll check your spelling first." That was her version of love, polished, poised, and painfully conditional. I didn't grow up wrapped in hugs. I grew up walking on glass, always trying to be enough for someone who seemed perpetually unimpressed. And my dad? I never knew him. He left when I was 2. Mom never talked about him. I stopped asking around age 5. So it was just us, 2 strangers in a quiet house, orbiting each other without ever really colliding. But even coldness becomes normal after a while. I learned how to disappear in plain sight. I sketched. A lot. Faces, mostly. Women who looked like they had secrets, men with broken smiles. And when I turned 14, something changed. Not in me. In her. She started dressing softer. Wearing her hair down. Laughing at things I didn't find funny. That's when Ethan showed up. The first time I saw him, he was standing in the foyer in a black trench coat, holding a bottle of wine and looking like he was trying not to be noticed. Tall. Stoic. Quiet. He nodded when Mom introduced us and said, "Hey, Ava." Just like that. No fake smile. No forced enthusiasm. Just acknowledgement. He didn't try to charm me. And weirdly, I liked that. Most men tried to earn Olivia's affection by pretending to care about me. They'd bring gifts, ask about school, compliment my hair like I was a pet. Ethan never did that. He didn't try to be my stepdad. He didn't try to be anything. He was just there, this calm, steady pulse in a house that used to rattle with tension. In the beginning, I honestly thought he didn't like me. He was polite but distant. He'd pass me in the hallway and say night. He fixed the broken light in my closet once. Changed the oil in Mom's car. Never lingered. Never pried. At dinner, he'd ask Mom about work. She'd ask him about his clients, real estate stuff I didn't understand. They weren't affectionate. They barely touched. I never once caught them kissing. And that's what made everything later more confusing. Because growing up, I never saw love. I saw transaction. Politeness. Performance. Ethan was different, but he wasn't loving. Not then. What he was, though, was present. When I had my first panic attack at 16, hyperventilating in my room after Mom screamed at me over a B+ in math, it wasn't her who came in. It was him. He knocked once, gently. Waited. Then opened the door and just sat on the floor beside my bed. Said nothing. Just sat there until my breathing slowed. Before he left, he said, "You're not weak. Don't let anyone tell you that. Not even her." And I think that was the first moment something inside me softened toward him. I didn't know it then. But that was the beginning of something. Not love. Not attraction. Just awareness. I started noticing him more. The way he always stood between Mom and me when things got heated. The way he made my tea exactly how I liked it, even though I never told him. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Not in a weird way. In a way that made me feel seen. And when I turned 17, I drew a sketch of him. Just for practice, I told myself. Just a study of his face. But I never showed anyone. I kept it in the back of my closet like a secret I didn't fully understand. By the time I graduated high school, he and Mom were barely speaking. I could feel the walls cracking. The air got heavier. The silences longer. Then, one morning, he was gone. His side of the closet empty. His toothbrush gone. A post-it on the fridge. Didn't work out. I'll be in touch. That was it. Mom said nothing. She poured herself a glass of wine and told me to wash the dishes. I never saw him again. Until 2 years later. But we'll get to that. The point is, Ethan wasn't a father figure. He wasn't someone who shaped my childhood or held my hand at school plays. He was a shadow. A presence. But in a life where love always felt earned and withheld, he was the only one who ever showed up when I needed someone. And that stays with you. Even when you try to forget. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when it becomes the very thing you swore you'd never do. Looking back, the foundation wasn't romance. It was survival. And survival bonds can grow roots you don't see until they're wrapped around your whole heart. Some endings don't explode. They don't scream or cry or leave shattered glass on the floor. Some endings are quiet. Clinical. Like a surgery you weren't awake for, but still wake up from feeling sore in places you didn't know existed. That's how they ended. Ethan and my mother. No shouting matches. No thrown plates. Just a slow unraveling. Like someone pulling threads from the seams of a sweater until you're left holding fabric and wondering when it stopped being whole. I was 18 when they finally split. But the divorce wasn't what broke me. It was how Ethan left. One morning, I walked downstairs and noticed something was off. His coffee mug wasn't in the sink. His keys weren't on the hook. His shoes were gone from the mat. I opened the hall closet. Empty. No luggage. No jackets. No goodbye. Just that post-it on the fridge. Didn't work out. I'll be in touch. I stared at that note for 10 full minutes. And I remember thinking, was that for her? Or for me? Olivia didn't react. Not that day. Not the next. She moved through the house like nothing had changed. Like he had never existed. And when I asked her, "Are you okay?" she just blinked at me, expression flat, and said, "Some people aren't meant to stay." Then she turned back to her tablet and started scrolling through real estate listings. That was her coping mechanism, control and coldness. If she could buy it, fix it, wear it, she could survive it. I, on the other hand, broke in silence. I didn't know why his absence felt like a deeper cut than it should have. I wasn't supposed to care this much. He wasn't my dad. He barely spoke to me most days. But when someone has ever seen you at your most vulnerable, and didn't flinch, their absence leaves a bigger hole than you want to admit. I didn't cry. I just stopped drawing. My sketchbook stayed closed for months. My grades dropped. I withdrew from my friends. That year, my therapist, Dr. Kelly Voss, started asking more questions. She asked me why I'd become so emotionally numb. I didn't know how to explain the kind of grief you feel when someone leaves, and you're not even sure if you're allowed to miss them. That spring, I graduated high school. No Ethan. No flowers. No text. Just Mom, in her usual designer dress, clapping twice during the ceremony and checking her watch between speeches. That summer, she grew colder. And then came the accident. One text. "Can you come home this weekend?" That was the last thing my mother ever sent me. I ignored it. I was tired of the guilt tripping. Tired of pretending we had a connection that didn't exist. She died 3 days later. A drunk driver. Rain. A corner she took too fast. I remember staring at my phone after the call came. Just staring. I opened our last conversation. That message. "Can you come home this weekend?" And I wanted to scream. Not just from loss, but from the regret. From the fact that I didn't know if I was grieving her death, or the death of what we never had. The funeral was a blur of black dresses and fake sympathy. But Ethan was there. I spotted him by the side of the church, away from everyone, hands clasped in front of him, eyes like storm clouds. We didn't speak. Not then. I was 19. Alone. I had no parents. No family. Just grief. Just silence. I moved back to campus. Took on a double major to keep myself busy. Started therapy again. And still, There was a part of me that kept replaying those quiet moments from before. The tea, the closet light, the sketch. The way he once told me, "You're not weak." For the first time, I started wondering where he was. What he was doing. Whether he thought of me at all. I didn't admit it out loud. Not even to Dr. Voss. But I would lie in bed and imagine what I'd say if I saw him again. I hated myself for that. But the longing didn't stop. A year passed. Then another. I turned 21. Noah threw me a surprise party. I pretended to smile. I laughed. But I still felt hollow. Because somewhere in that hollow space lived a ghost I hadn't dealt with. Ethan Cross. And I didn't know it yet. But fate wasn't done with us. Not even close. After the funeral, life didn't go back to normal. Because there was no normal to return to. It was like I had stepped into someone else's body, someone who smiled in class, responded to texts, showed up for group projects. But inside, I was walking through fog. At first, I thought I was getting better. I joined a study group. Started working as a student assistant in the campus art department. I even took a few electives I'd never have tried before, film theory, poetry, even boxing. I was building something. A life. And Noah was always there. We had chemistry. The kind people see from across the room and whisper about. He was the guy who remembered my coffee order, teased me during lectures, knew the name of every sketch I never showed anyone. When I was with him, things felt light. Manageable. And for a while, I convinced myself that's what I needed. So I let myself fall halfway into him. I let him hold my hand. Let him kiss me at the Halloween party. Let him leave his hoodie in my dorm like he belonged there. But every time he touched me, something in me pulled back. Not because of him, but because of what still lived under the surface. I told myself I was healing. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. And the truth was, I hadn't heard Ethan's name in over a year. Not a text. Not a call. Just silence. And then, out of nowhere, a message. It came in on a Thursday night, just past 11 p.m. No warning. No build-up. Ava. I'm sorry it's been so long. Are you free this weekend? I'd like to see you. Just to talk. I stared at it for a full minute. My hands went cold. I could hear Noah in the other room laughing at something on Netflix. But all I could focus on was the blinking cursor in the reply box. For a moment, I felt 17 again. Back in that house. Back in that silence. Back to the sketch I hid in the back of my closet. I didn't reply right away. I slept on it. Thought about it. Tried to imagine what he wanted. Closure? Guilt? Or something else? I met him 2 days later. A quiet cafe near the harbor. I was early. Sat by the window. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked tired. Older. A little heavier. Beard slightly overgrown. Like life had been dragging him through something. But his eyes? Still gray. Still searching. We didn't hug. Just sat. Hey, he said. Hey, I said back. Silence. Then, he said, "You look like Olivia." My stomach dropped. "That's not the first thing you say after 2 years." He nodded. "Sorry. I didn't know what else to lead with." I wanted to scream at him. Ask him why he left. Why he never checked in after the funeral. Why he disappeared. But instead, I just stared at him. And he stared back. And somewhere in that long, weighted silence, I realized something terrifying. I didn't hate him. I missed him. And that scared me more than anything. Over coffee, we talked. Nothing deep at first: work, college, the weather, mutual acquaintances. But then the questions came. Do you still draw? How's therapy? Are you seeing anyone? That last one hung in the air. I hesitated. Sort of, I said. Good guy? Yeah. He's safe. Ethan looked down at his cup. Safe's good. But the way he said it? It didn't sound like he believed it. After that, we met more often. Once a week. Then twice. We told ourselves it was to catch up. But we both knew it was more. It wasn't physical. Not yet. But the energy shifted. The way he looked at me lingered too long. The way I laughed around him was too soft, too real. I started sketching again. His face. His hands. His eyes. One night, Noah found my sketchpad. Who's this? He asked. I lied. Said it was from memory. A model. He looked at me like he didn't believe me. And maybe he didn't. Because around that time, he started pulling away. Less texting. More space. And I let it happen. Because in my heart, I knew. Whatever I had with Noah, it was soft. Sweet. But it wasn't real. Not the way it was with Ethan. With Ethan, it wasn't safety. It was gravity. The kind that pulls even when you know you shouldn't go. One night, after dinner and too much wine, I asked him, "Did you ever think of me like that?" He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, jaw tight, eyes guarded. Not when I should've. And too much when I shouldn't. That night, we didn't kiss. But something passed between us. And everything changed. You can feel it before it happens. That moment. The shift in the air. The pause that holds too long. The silence that suddenly feels louder than words. That's how it began. Not with a kiss. Not with a grab. With a silence. One too many glances that lasted a second too long. One too many nights where he walked me to my car and didn't say goodbye right away. One too many jokes that ended with eyes meeting, but neither of us laughing. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even fully wanted. But it happened. And once it did, we both knew we couldn't go back. It was late. A Thursday. One of those strange spring nights where the air's still cold but the moon feels too close. I had been at Ethan's place, the one-bedroom loft he rented near the river. We'd just finished eating Chinese takeout. There were 2 glasses of red wine on the counter, and Billie Holiday playing softly in the background, not because it was romantic, but because it made the silence feel less awkward. I was sitting on the couch, sketching. He was at the window, nursing his drink. We hadn't spoken much that night. Not real talk, anyway. But the quiet felt full, like both of us were tiptoeing around something we didn't want to name. I remember it so clearly. He turned from the window and just watched me. "What are you drawing?" I flipped the sketchbook closed. "Nothing." "Was it me?" I didn't answer. He walked over, slowly, like he wasn't sure if he should. Sat down beside me. Not too close, but not far enough. I could feel the heat from his arm. "Can I see?" I hesitated. Then I handed him the book. He flipped through the pages. His own face stared back at him. Line after line. Eye after eye. Ava. Just my name. But the way he said it cracked something open. I looked at him. Really looked. And in that moment, I didn't see Ethan the stepdad. Or Ethan the widower. I saw Ethan, the man. Tired. Complicated. Broken in familiar places. And without thinking, I reached out. Just touched his hand. Lightly. Like I was asking a question. He looked at me, eyes searching. Then he laced his fingers with mine. It was the smallest thing. But it was everything. The air between us changed. He didn't pull away. And neither did I. We sat there, like that, for what felt like forever. His thumb brushing the top of my hand, slowly, like he was memorizing it. I should have pulled away. Every voice in my head screamed that. But I didn't. Because for the first time in years, I felt seen. Wanted. Not for who I was supposed to be, but for who I really was. And he looked at me like I was something sacred and forbidden all at once. I looked down. We can't. I know. But neither of us let go. We didn't kiss. Not that night. But that touch, that one, long, slow, unspoken yes, it opened a door we couldn't close. When I got back to campus, I didn't sleep. I laid in bed replaying every second. The warmth of his skin. The weight of the silence. The fact that I never wanted to pull my hand away. The next day, I skipped lunch with Noah. I couldn't look him in the eyes. Because something had shifted in me. Something irreversible. Over the next week, everything felt louder. The way Ethan's messages made my stomach flip. The way I smiled without realizing when his name popped up. The way my sketchpad filled with more drawings of his hands, his shoulders, the curve of his neck when he turned toward me. I told Dr. Voss about the hand-holding. She didn't gasp. Didn't judge. She just asked. "And how did it make you feel?" I stared at the floor. Alive. "Do you think he's manipulating you?" "No," I said immediately. Then softer, "I think I'm choosing him." A few days later, we saw each other again. This time, the touch wasn't accidental. He put his hand on my back as I walked through the door. I didn't flinch. He helped me off with my coat. I didn't stop him. That night, we sat closer. Our knees touched. He reached for my hand like it was already his. And it felt like I'd been holding space for that touch for years. This wasn't about lust. It wasn't about rebellion. It was about something deeper. Recognition. I saw myself in his silence. He saw himself in my softness. We were two bruised people who had quietly kept each other alive, and were now standing on the edge of something no one would understand. Something we barely understood ourselves. That night, before I left, he touched my face. Just once. His thumb brushed my cheek like I was something fragile. "Are you scared?" he asked. I nodded. "Me too," he said. But neither of us moved. Because sometimes, fear isn't a warning. It's a sign you're finally standing in front of something real. It happened. Quietly. Not like the movies, no fireworks, no breathless declarations. Just a moment that tipped into another. And once it did, there was no going back. It was raining. The kind of rain that softens the world, makes everything feel slower, more intimate. I had gone to Ethan's again. We weren't pretending anymore. Not even to ourselves. The way we looked at each other had changed. The way he touched my arm when he passed behind me. The way I lingered in the doorway when I should have left. It was all heavier now. Louder. Even in silence. That night, he cooked. Something simple, pasta, red sauce, a bottle of wine already breathing on the counter. We talked, but our voices were soft. Our words were surface level. Underneath, everything pulsed with tension. He stood beside me at the sink, drying dishes. I handed him a glass. Our fingers touched. I didn't pull away. He didn't either. Slowly, deliberately, I looked up. And he looked down. That was all it took. That was the line. And we crossed it. He kissed me like he wasn't sure if he was allowed, but couldn't stop himself either. Soft. Searching. Apologetic. Like every breath between us carried 100 unsaid questions. I kissed him back. Not out of rebellion. Out of recognition. I had spent years trying to feel real. Trying to feel wanted in a world that only saw the version of me it liked best. But in that moment, with him, I wasn't performing. I was seen. He didn't push. He waited. Every movement was a question. And every answer I gave was a yes. We moved like two people who weren't rushing, because we'd already waited for years. Every kiss, every touch, every moment was steeped in history. We weren't strangers discovering each other. We were a story finally catching up to itself. When it was over, when we lay there, silent and tangled in sheets and rain tapping against the windows, he reached for my hand. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded. But I didn't know what I felt. Because part of me wanted to cry. And not from shame. From the terrifying realization that I'd just crossed into something I could never explain to anyone. Not Noah. Not my therapist. Not even myself. The next morning, I left early. We didn't say much. Just a quiet "see you soon." No plans. No promises. But everything felt different. That day at campus, the world felt louder. Noah passed me on the quad and smiled. I waved back. But guilt twisted in my stomach like a knife. Dr. Voss asked if I wanted to talk. I said maybe next week. Because I didn't want to explain. I didn't want her analysis. I just wanted to feel what I was feeling without justification. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. My body looked the same. But I wasn't the same girl who had walked into Ethan's apartment 24 hours earlier. I had stepped out of the gray and into fire. For a while, we lived in that secret space. Our own world. Our own rules. We were careful. No public places. No sleepovers. No evidence. But emotionally, we were reckless. He'd text me at midnight. I'd sneak over after class. We talked about everything, the past, the grief, the silence, the years lost to pretending. And every time I left his place, I felt more tethered to him. Not just physically. Emotionally. I started seeing less of Noah. Avoided friends. Isolated myself in the art studio. Because how do you explain loving someone you're not supposed to love? Someone who was once your mother's husband. Someone who saw you grow up. But also, the only person who ever truly understood you. The weight of that contradiction pressed down on me. But I didn't run. Neither did he. We were already too far gone. Secrets are like cracks in porcelain. At first, they're invisible. You hold the teacup and smile, pretending nothing's wrong. But then, someone leans in too close. They see it. The hairline fracture. And suddenly, it's all you can focus on. That's what it became, Ethan and me. A beautiful thing quietly splitting apart from the inside. It started small. Missed calls from Noah. Where have you been? Sorry, I'd text back. Late night in the studio. I'd lie. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because if I told the truth, everything would fall apart. And I wasn't ready. Neither was Ethan. We kept things careful. Private meetups. Discreet weekends away. But emotion doesn't follow protocol. And soon, we slipped. The first real crack came during a gallery opening. My art professor had chosen 2 of my sketches for the senior exhibit, both were of hands. Ethan's hands. He had no idea I'd submitted them. And when he walked in that night, dressed in gray, jacket neat, hair combed back, his eyes froze on the drawings. Noah stood beside me. "These are beautiful," he said. I watched Ethan, across the room, lock eyes with me. He knew. And I knew he knew. Noah noticed the look. "Who's he?" "An old family friend," I said. Too fast. Too rehearsed. He narrowed his eyes. "He keeps staring at you." I laughed it off. Changed the subject. But something in Noah shifted that night. He wasn't stupid. He just wasn't ready to admit what his gut already suspected. Weeks passed. Ethan and I tried to pretend we were fine. But paranoia crept in. He'd ask, "Did anyone see you come in?" I'd ask, "Do I smell like your cologne?" We started avoiding places we once loved, the cafe near the river, the little bookstore in the square. And every time my phone lit up with Noah's name, I flinched. Because I couldn't lie well anymore. I was exhausted. Not from the love, but from the hiding. Then came the birthday dinner. Noah invited me. A small group. Mutual friends. I didn't want to go. Ethan told me I should. People will start asking questions if you vanish, he said. So I went. I wore red, a color I hadn't worn in months. And the moment I stepped in, I saw him. Noah. Waiting. Hopeful. I smiled. Tried to play the part. We laughed. Ate. Took pictures. But it was like acting in a play I hadn't rehearsed for. Then, halfway through the night, I went to the bathroom. And when I came out, Ethan was there. In the hallway. I froze. What are you doing here? He shrugged. I needed to see you. You can't just show up like this. I know. Noah's here. I know. But neither of us moved. He stepped closer. We didn't touch. But the air between us pulsed. I could feel it, the electricity, the heat. And behind me, footsteps. I turned. Noah. Silent. Watching. His face didn't change, but his eyes did. Something in them hardened. He didn't say a word. Just nodded once, and walked away. After that night, everything unraveled. Noah stopped texting. My friends grew quiet. Dr. Voss looked at me longer in sessions. You've changed, she said. Is that bad? I asked. She didn't answer. Because she knew, change isn't always growth. Sometimes, it's corrosion. And I was starting to rust from the inside. Rumors started. Whispers in the studio. She's seeing someone older. A professor? Maybe a married guy. I laughed them off in public. But inside, I felt exposed. Like someone had peeled back my skin and pinned it to a wall. Ethan grew more distant. Not because he didn't care, but because he did. And he knew this couldn't stay hidden forever. We need to talk, he said one night. I nodded. But the truth was, I wasn't ready. Because I knew whatever we decided next, someone was going to get hurt. Maybe all of us. Because secrets always scream louder once they start slipping out. Secrets rot when kept too long. They start out as small things, silent, shadowed. But they grow. They fester. And when they finally crawl into the light, nothing is ever the same again. Noah confronted me on a Monday. I was in the library. Alone. I didn't hear him come in until I felt the stillness, like the air had stopped moving. He stood at the end of the table, holding something in his hand. My sketchbook. Pages flipped open. Ethan's face. His hands. Us. How long? That's all he said. No shouting. No swearing. Just that. I stared at the table. It's not what you think. Don't insult me, Ava. I looked up. His eyes weren't angry. They were broken. Was it always him? I wanted to say no. I wanted to say it didn't start until after. But even I didn't believe it anymore. Because the truth was Ethan had been in my blood since I was 16. We just hadn't named it. Do you love him? My lips parted. But nothing came out. Because how do you explain love when it feels like both a rescue and a crime? I thought I knew you, Noah said. I thought I knew myself, I whispered. He dropped the sketchbook on the table and walked out. I didn't follow, because there was nothing left to say. The next 48 hours moved like a firestorm. First the texts, then the glances in class. People whispering behind their coffee cups. One girl DM'd me, "Are you seriously hooking up with your ex-stepdad?" Another posted one of my sketches on her story with a caption, "This is sick." Everything I'd feared was now happening. And worse, it was public. Ethan called me. "They know," I said. He didn't respond for a beat. Then quietly, "Come over." When I got to his place, he looked different. Not just older. Weary. Like the weight of all our secrets had finally settled into his bones. "I should have stopped it," he said. "Would you have?" I asked. He didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. We sat on the floor. No music. No wine. Just truth. He told me he'd been called in by HR at his office. Someone sent them screenshots of us. Sketches. Messages. The art exhibit had been the beginning of the leak. Now it was a flood. They asked if it was real, he said. "What did you say?" He looked at me like he was memorizing my face. "That I loved you." I swallowed. The word felt too heavy. Too dangerous. "Do you?" I whispered. He reached across the floor. Took my hand. I don't know how not to. And just like that, the anger melted. The fear, the shame, the judgment, it all became background noise. Because for the first time in weeks, it was just us again. Two people against a world that refused to understand. The next day, I met with Dr. Voss. She didn't look surprised. Just sad. "You know this won't end clean," she said. "It already hasn't." "Then what now?" I took a breath. Now I decide who I am. Not who they say I am. Later that week, a notice went up on the student board. Ava Reynolds withdraws from Spring Gallery showing. All remaining sketches removed by request. My world shrunk. People stopped talking to me. Some professors looked at me differently. And yet, I felt lighter. Because at least now, it wasn't hiding anymore. Ethan lost his job 2 weeks later. He didn't tell me right away. But I knew something had shifted. "They said it's not about us," he said. "But we both know it is." We sat on the back steps of his apartment, watching the rain again. Everything had changed. Except this. Us. "Do you regret it?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "I regret the world we did it in," he said. "But not the love." That's when I knew. No matter what came next, we'd already crossed a line. And there was no returning to who we were before. You think once the secret's out, it'll get easier. That the weight lifts. That you can finally breathe. But no one tells you the silence after is heavier than the lie ever was. Because after the storm, there's wreckage. And you're the only one standing in it. I didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. The messages didn't stop. Some were cruel. Some were worse, curious. Is it true? Why would you do that? Did he groom you? Every word felt like a needle. Not because they were wrong, but because I didn't even know the answers myself. Ethan and I didn't talk for a while. Not because we were angry, but because we didn't know what to say. What do you say when the thing that kept you alive is also what's tearing your life apart? I stopped going to class, dropped my art elective, deleted my Instagram. Dr. Voss called and left a voicemail. I'm still here, Ava. Whenever you're ready. I wasn't. Not yet. One night, I sat on the floor of my room, surrounded by old sketchbooks. And I opened one I hadn't touched in years. Inside, a drawing of Olivia, my mother. Cold. Perfect. Smiling with her mouth, never her eyes. I stared at the drawing, and suddenly I was 14 again. Standing in the kitchen, watching her yell at Ethan over the smallest things. Her voice, sharp like cracked glass. His, always steady, always low. I remembered wondering why he never yelled back. Why he always looked tired. I remembered the first time he picked me up from school. He brought snacks. Waited in the rain. Said nothing the whole ride home but turned the heater up so I'd stay warm. I remembered birthdays, not the cake, not the candles. But the way he stayed behind to clean while Mom went to bed early. I remembered being 16, crying in my room after my first heartbreak. And Ethan sitting quietly on the floor beside me. Saying nothing. Just being there. People say this started when I was grown. But love doesn't begin when you touch someone. It begins in the quiet, unnoticed spaces. In memory. In patterns. And when I saw those sketches, I finally admitted the truth. This didn't happen to me. I walked into it, step by step, year by year. And now I was standing inside the cost of it all. Ethan called one night. Just one word. Come. I went. His apartment was darker than usual. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I've been thinking, he said. About us? He nodded. This isn't love if it destroys you. I sat beside him. It didn't destroy me. It changed me. He turned. His eyes were red. But was it worth it? I couldn't answer that. Because I didn't know. He walked to the window. Stared out at the rain, again. I lost my job. My reputation. Every friend I had. He paused. But I'd do it again. My chest ached. Even if I'm not sure I would. The silence after that felt eternal. Two truths sitting side by side, too big to hold at once. Days passed. I tried to live again. Went to therapy. Started drawing again. Not Ethan this time. Not me. Just shapes. Movement. Pain. Dr. Voss said that was good. You're not trying to make sense of it. You're just letting it live. And she was right. Because some things aren't meant to be understood. They're meant to be felt. And carried. And survived. Ethan and I didn't see each other for a while. A week. Then 2. And then I bumped into him. Grocery store. Aisle 6. We both reached for the same jar of olives. Of all things. We laughed. The kind of laugh you let out when you've already cried too much. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he whispered. We stood there for a second. No declarations. No regrets. Just two people who once held fire between them, now holding distance like a secret. That night, I drew for hours. Not him. Not me. Just that moment. The jar of olives. The awkward laugh. The ghost of something once unbearable. Finally, beginning to fade. Sometimes, the only way forward is to turn back to the words we never said, to write the letters we never sent. Because when the world collapses around you, there's a strange kind of freedom in the silence of a page. I sat at my desk that night, the weight of everything pressing down like a storm waiting to break. The room was quiet except for the scratch of my pen on paper. I wasn't sure if I was writing to him, Ethan, or to the girl I used to be. The pen hovered above the page, then moved. Ethan, I don't know how to say this without breaking. Words spilled out, raw, unfiltered. About the guilt. About the love that felt like both salvation and destruction. About the loneliness that followed when everyone else turned away. I wrote about the nights when his touch was a lifeline. The mornings when silence screamed louder than words. The way grief tangled us together, and the way that love blurred every line we tried to draw. I wrote about the future, uncertain, uncharted. About fear. About hope. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully. It wasn't meant to be sent, at least, not yet. It was a lifeline for me, a way to hold all the pieces when the edges felt like they were breaking. The next day, I met Dr. Voss. I told her about the letter. Writing is powerful, she said. It gives voice to the chaos inside. But it also asks a question, what do you want now? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Meanwhile, Ethan and I talked, really talked, for the first time in months. No accusations. No pleading. Just honesty. He told me about his fears, losing himself, losing me, losing what little piece he had left. I told him about my confusion, about wanting to love freely but feeling trapped by the world's gaze. Maybe, he said quietly, we need to redefine what this is. Not just love. Not just grief. Something else. Something less destructive? I asked. He nodded. Maybe. I spent days walking the city alone, the rain washing away old doubts, the cold air clearing my head. I sketched again, not Ethan's hands, but the city's shadows, the lonely streets, the sky after a storm. Art became my refuge, a place to put the messy, the uncertain, the painful. Noah reached out once more. Not with anger. Not with demands. Just a simple message, I hope you find peace. I didn't reply. But his words stayed with me. Because peace, whatever that meant, felt like the real goal now. Weeks later, I found myself back at the art studio. Not to hide, but to create. To transform pain into something real. Something honest. And one night, I sat down and wrote another letter. This one was different. To Ava, wherever you are, you survived. You're still here. And that means everything is possible. Because maybe love isn't just about holding on. Maybe sometimes it's about letting go. I don't know what the future holds for Ethan and me. Or for me and the life I'm trying to rebuild. But for the first time in a long time, I believe in beginnings, even if they come from endings. So where do we go from here? That's the question I live with. The answer is still unwritten. Justice. It's a word we all throw around, so simple, so clear in theory. But in stories like mine, justice isn't black and white. It's tangled in shadows, in pain, in the messy spaces where right and wrong collide. Looking back, I wonder, was justice ever really possible? For Ethan? For me? For the people who watched us, judged us, whispered behind closed doors? Ethan lost his job, his reputation, the life he built for himself. Some called it karma, others called it consequence. But to me, it was heartbreak carved into reality. I lost friends, trust, a part of myself I never thought I'd find again. But I also found courage. The kind that doesn't roar. The quiet kind that grows in the cracks. My therapist once told me, justice doesn't always mean punishment. Sometimes it's about balance, healing, learning. And I think she's right. Because justice, in my story, wasn't about retribution. It was about reckoning. We lived through a storm that tore us apart. And in the aftermath, we each had to face our own truths. To ask hard questions. To forgive or not forgive. To heal or remain broken. I don't have all the answers. I don't even know if there will ever be a clear right or wrong. But I do know this. Love is complicated. Pain is complicated. And justice, well, justice is messy. So, was it justice? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe justice isn't the destination, but the journey itself. The way we choose to carry our stories. The lessons we learn. The forgiveness we grant to others and to ourselves. As for Ethan and me, we're still writing our chapters. Some days are light. Some days are dark. But we keep going. Because that's all we can do. And if you've stayed with me this far, thank you. For listening. For witnessing this complicated story. For reminding me that no story is perfect. And that sometimes, the greatest justice is simply being heard. What would your story say about justice? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care of your heart and each other.